I was carrying my father's ashes inside after the memorial service when my neighbor, who had always hated us for ruining the block, walked over laughing and said, "Guess there's less trash on the street now." I stared at him in disbelief, my hands shaking, but before I could speak, he leaned in closer and whispered, "If you loved him so much, maybe you should have left with him." That night, I sat alone in the living room, listening to the sound of firecrackers exploding in my backyard planted there by his sons to celebrate my loss. My name's Daniel. I lived, in a quiet town outside Akron, Ohio. The kind of place where people pretend to mind their business but watch your every move from behind their curtains. My dad moved us there when I was 12. Just me and him. Mom had taken off with some guy from her work. Dad never talked bad about her. Just told me some people aren't strong enough to stick around. We bought a little beat-up house at the end of Pine Street. Needed a lot of work, but Dad loved it. Worked extra shifts at the auto shop just to pay for it. That place was all we had. And from the second we moved in, Ken Murdoch decided we didn't belong. Ken lived across the street in this perfect two-story colonial with spotless shutters and one of those American flags that never had a wrinkle in it. He ran the neighborhood watch like it was a damn military operation. If your grass got too long, you got a warning. If your trash bins weren't rolled in by noon, another warning. Dad never said much, but I could see it ate at him. It wasn't just about rules. It was about who he thought deserved to live here, and who didn't. And we didn't. He called us the trash family. More than once. Always when he thought I couldn't hear. Always when my dad wasn't around. Dad's only advice was, "Don't give him the satisfaction." I held on to that for a long time. Maybe too long. When Dad got sick, things got worse. Stage 4 lung cancer. It didn't matter that he hadn't smoked a day in his life. The doctors gave him 6 months. He made it 4. Toward the end, he couldn't even mow the lawn anymore. I tried to keep up, but between work, bills, hospital visits, it just got away from me. Ken started leaving notes. Taping them right to our front door. Yard violation. Property neglect. Notification of community standards breach. The week Dad died, I found a pile of dog crap smeared across our porch steps. Somebody, I knew damn well who, even knocked over the mailbox. I had to jam it back into the ground with a cinder block just to keep the mail coming. Every time I looked across the street, there he was, Ken, sitting on his porch, beer in one hand, watching like he was waiting for me to snap. I didn't. Not then. The day of Dad's memorial was gray and cold. A few of Dad's old friends from the shop came. A couple cousins I barely knew showed up and left early. I gave a short speech. Tried to hold it together. Then I drove home alone, carrying Dad's ashes in this simple wooden urn we picked out together before he got too sick to decide. I was halfway up the driveway when I heard him. "Well, would you look at that? Guess there's less trash on the street now." I froze. The urn nearly slipped out of my hands. Ken was standing at the end of my driveway, arms crossed, beer bottle swinging from his fingers. Grinning like he just won the damn lottery. I stared at him, my throat locked up. I couldn't even move. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the spit in the corners of his mouth. "If you loved him so much," he said, voice low and full of venom, "maybe you should have left with him." For a second, I honestly thought about lunging at him. I could see it clear as day, knocking that smug look right off his face. But somehow I didn't. I turned around. I walked inside. I put the urn on the mantel. And I sat down on the couch with my head in my hands, feeling more alone than I had in my entire life. I stayed there most of the night. Around midnight I heard it, sharp pops, cracks, whistling sounds. Fireworks. I ran to the back door, heart pounding. I looked out into the backyard and saw them. Fireworks and firecrackers planted all over the yard, going off in bursts of red, green, and gold. Sparks flying into the dead winter grass, little fires flaring up then dying out. I could hear laughter from across the street. Ken's two sons, Ricky and Jeff, were out there, sneaking back across the road, laughing like maniacs. Ricky even yelled, "Happy funeral!" before ducking inside. They were celebrating my father's death. Celebrating. Something inside me broke. I stood there in the cold, staring out at the burned patches of grass, the empty black sky. And I knew I wasn't letting this go. Not this time. I didn't sleep. I sat up all night, staring at the urn, at the empty fireplace, at the clock ticking so loud it sounded like a bomb in my ears. And by morning I had a plan. It wasn't going to be fast. It wasn't going to be loud. Ken liked to control everything, his house, his lawn, the whole damn neighborhood. I was going to take that away from him piece by piece, slow enough that he wouldn't even realize it was happening until it was too late. I wasn't just going to hurt his pride. I was going to ruin his life. First thing I did was simple. I made a few phone calls. Ken ran the neighborhood watch, but he wasn't exactly a clean man. Word got around over the years. My friend Jared, who still worked part-time at the county clerk's office, owed me a favor from way back. I asked him to dig into anything public on Ken Murdoch. Fines, property liens, anything. By the end of the week, Jared called me back, laughing. Turns out Ken had an oops, sitting in public record. A few years back, he built a tool shed in his backyard without a permit. Whole thing was against city codes. Bigger than allowed, too close to the neighbor's property line. It had been overlooked because Ken was tight with the last code inspector. New guy in that office? Didn't know Ken. Didn't know him a thing. All it took was one anonymous report. 2 weeks later, Ken came home to a bright orange notice of violation stapled to his fence post. I watched from my window as he ripped it off and stomped up his driveway, red-faced and shouting at nobody. He had 30 days to tear down the shed or face fines. I wasn't done. I started posting online, carefully, about how Ken's boys had been setting off fireworks during funerals. Local Facebook groups. Neighborhood apps. I made fake accounts to post stories about 2 disrespectful young men causing chaos and a father who encouraged it. Neighbors started talking. Ken always cared about his reputation. It was part of his power over people. And now, little by little, that power was slipping. One night, about a month after the firecrackers, I saw Ricky in the driveway, yelling at Ken. Real, full-on screaming. Pushing him. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough to know Ricky was blaming Ken for everybody treating us like trash now. I smiled. Small victories. But small wasn't enough. I wanted Ken to feel what I felt. Alone. Helpless. Broken. And I had just the way to do it. Remember how Ken used to sit on his porch every night, drink in hand? Acting like he owned the street? I started messing with him there too. Not obvious stuff. Just little things. At first, I'd park my car in front of his house. Totally legal, public street, but it made him mad. He'd come out, arms waving, shouting that he was going to call the police. I made sure to record those moments. I even got a few good videos of him screaming curse words at me while I calmly sat there, pretending to read a book. Then I started inviting friends over, people Dad knew, old coworkers who remembered what Ken had said. We'd have little barbecues on my lawn, right where he could see. Laughing, eating, acting like life was beautiful. Loud music playing just low enough that it wasn't against the noise ordinance. Ken would sit there on his porch, face twisted up like he was eating glass. The best part? More and more neighbors started waving to me. Smiling. Talking to me in public. Because when you strip away fear, bullies lose their shine real fast. But Ken, he wasn't just angry anymore. He was unraveling. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard a loud bang. Ran outside. Somebody had smashed in my mailbox again. I didn't have to guess who. I called the cops this time. Made a full report. Pulled out one of those videos I had of Ken screaming threats at me. The officer, young guy, new in town, didn't look impressed with Ken's name. 2 days later, Ken got served with a restraining order. I watched from the window as he read the papers. First confusion. Then rage. Then something close to fear. He had no clue how far I was willing to take this. He thought he could crush me when I was at my lowest. He had no idea I had nothing left to lose. And I was just getting started. Ken tried to fight back. He started small, like always, little things. Calling in fake noise complaints on me. Pretending my grass was too long when it was freshly mowed. Reporting suspicious activity when my friends came over. Didn't work. I kept everything clean. I had cameras installed all around my property. I had recordings, receipts, witnesses. Every time he tried to make a move, I buried him in paperwork and evidence. The cops got tired of him real quick. The restraining order meant he couldn't come near my property, couldn't yell at me, couldn't even look at me the wrong way without risking jail time. And it was eating him alive. You could see it. But Ken wasn't smart enough to stay beaten. One morning, I woke up to find my tires slashed. All 4. Deep, ugly cuts. Whoever did it was careful. No fingerprints, no cameras caught them. I knew in my gut it was Ricky or Jeff, but proving it was another thing. Didn't matter. I took pictures. I filed a police report. And then I made another call. This time, not to the cops. I called a buddy of mine, Travis, who ran a repo and towing service a few towns over. Travis owed me a favor too. Dad had once fixed his transmission for free when he was broke. I asked him if he had any legal tow jobs in my neighborhood. Legitimate ones. Anything close to Ken's house. He laughed and said, "Actually, yeah. Ken's got a second-hand boat parked in his backyard, right?" I almost dropped the phone. Turns out Ken bought an old speedboat a few years back and had been fixing it up ever since. Problem was, the boat wasn't registered right. Paperwork was messed up. And the city had a rule: unregistered vehicles or vessels couldn't sit on residential property past a certain number of days without fines or removal. And guess who found that out the hard way? Travis didn't even have to bend the rules. He just filed the right forms. And one bright Saturday morning, a big tow truck rolled up. I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, while they hauled Ken's precious boat out of his backyard. He came running out in his robe, screaming, red-faced, looking like a man about to have a heart attack. But it was legal. Totally clean. The city had ordered it. Ken lost it. Full on, screaming at the tow guy, screaming at the sky, screaming at me, until Ricky tried to calm him down, and he shoved his own son onto the lawn. Neighbors watched. Some recorded. I saw at least one woman, Mrs. Adler, holding her phone straight at him, lips pressed tight to keep from smiling. It went viral in our local Facebook group. Ken screaming about trash neighbors, while city workers calmly loaded up his boat. His reputation? Gone. The respect he clung to like armor? Gone. Even better, his family was cracking. Ricky moved out 2 weeks later, after another screaming match that ended with shattered glass and the cops showing up again. Jeff stuck around longer, but he stopped talking to Ken altogether. Wouldn't even look him in the eye. Ken was left alone in that perfect white house, sitting on his porch day after day, looking smaller and weaker every time I saw him. And I wasn't finished. Because I knew something else, something nobody else in town knew yet. Ken wasn't just dealing with neighborhood trouble. He was broke. He dumped most of his savings into that house, the boat, keeping up appearances. The fines from the shed, the boat, the noise complaints, the restraining order court fees, they were bleeding him dry. Fast. And I knew how to finish him off. All it would take was one last push. One move to send him crashing down for good. I just had to wait for the right moment. And it was coming soon. It was early spring when I saw the notice go up on Ken's front door. bright pink paper. Taped right in the center. Foreclosure notice. Turns out Ken had been months behind on his mortgage. He couldn't keep up once the fines and court costs started piling up. His perfect house, the thing he bragged about for years, was getting ripped away from him. I sat across the street and watched him read that notice. Watch his shoulders slump. Watch his hands tremble. He didn't scream this time. He didn't even curse. He just stood there, small and hollow. And for the first time, a tiny part of me, deep down, felt bad. Not enough to stop. He had choices. He could have been decent. He could have let a father and son live in peace. He didn't. He chose hate. He deserved every second of this. Over the next few weeks, the house started falling apart. Without Ken's sons around, the paint peeled, the lawn grew wild, the gutters sagged. He didn't even bother to sit on the porch anymore. He stayed inside. Hiding. I still had one last thing to do. One night, I went out with a can of cheap spray paint. I wasn't proud of it. It was stupid. It was petty. But it felt right. On the side of Ken's once perfect garage, I sprayed 4 big words. Who's trash now? The next morning, the whole neighborhood saw it. Ken came outside, saw the words, and just crumbled. Right there in his driveway. Sat down hard on the concrete like his legs gave out. He didn't even try to clean it off. 2 weeks later, a moving truck pulled up. Ken left town with whatever he could fit into the truck. Alone. No wife. No sons. No friends. He didn't even look at me when he drove away. I thought that would feel like victory. Like I'd finally set things right. But standing there on my porch, watching his tail lights disappear, all I felt was empty. I'd burned my life down to get revenge. I still had my father's ashes inside. Still had the memories. Still had the anger. But now there was nobody left to aim it at. And deep down, I knew Dad wouldn't have wanted this. He would have wanted me to move on. To let go. Instead, I stayed stuck there, living in a house full of ghosts, in a town that remembered every ugly thing that happened. Even now, months later, I drive past Ken's old house, now boarded up, still vacant, and I feel it. The weight of it all. I won. But it didn't bring Dad back. And it sure as hell didn't fix me.